apparently, from what we understand, is every child star had to have their parents on set.
Yeah, it's
a legal thing. And so,
or a guardian or someone watching. Yeah.
Yeah. And so all of this was going on. Brian Peck invited him to his house. He would have parties over his house. And apparently Drake Bell fell asleep and woke up to Brian Peck having oral sex with him. And I think Drake Bell was around 15, 16. And actually, we're the same age. So it's this whole thing, going back to what we said earlier, millennials being exposed to so much. And, that tale was just really horrible. And, thinking about Amanda Bynes right here is we owe Amanda Bynes an apology, in my opinion, because she suffered so much from mental health. I would love to have a
conversation with her, honestly, and just whatever she wants to talk about. And, shout out if anybody knows Amanda, let her know she always has an invitation here to shoot and talk with us, because what she's been through as a child star. And remember how you were saying, like, you can see that moment where, like, Justin Bieber, Drake, you can actually kind of look at their media as a child growing up through various projects or whatever interviews they're doing. You can see that there is a stark difference when something happened. A certain year, their look changed, their demeanor changed.
Yeah.
And those are all signs of trauma, abuse. All of the stuff that we've learned when we used to work with clients and stuff, it hits all the bars. If you think about it. It's, the change of the way they look, the way they present themselves, the way that Amanda has been so reserved, that poor thing. Like, it seems like she has kind of a Britney Spears situation, but because she didn't have even the same popularity as Britney, she's not even getting the same support with the conservatorship, because we're learning about these Coogan accounts where people are not getting money put into it. The parents are taking the money. There's so many different stories, because at one point, from my understanding, Amanda Bynes was actually going to get a emancipation from her parents.
Yeah.
Right?
But I think it was being convinced either by Dan Schneider or somebody.
So
it was
Dan
influenced.
Allegedly, I think, was influencing that situation. What I think they said on the episode is that she was running away to his house because she was having an issue with her parents. And then he took advantage of the space and the time because, imagine you're 16 years old, your parents are taking your money, allegedly, and you're trying to get away from that. You've got your producer then creates the safe space for you. You think it's safe, and that's when you get abused, allegedly. Again, she also released a statement that she said she doesn't remember anything that happened. She had a great time. She this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And I do want to acknowledge that's what her statement is, because she also is not probably comfortable to talk about it, or maybe something didn't happen. But from my viewpoint, looking at just the shift in her media, especially like the 2015 era, when she started to have all of those issues and pop up, something clearly happened to her. Something harmful happened to her, and it's sad.
Allegedly, she had a baby at 13. That's alleged.
Yeah, there's that Twitter account that hasn't been verified, but allegedly she would show photos of her driver's license or photos that were nowhere on the internet, that it was like, hey, this is me. This is Amanda Bynes. And then she was saying, like, my producer got me pregnant at 13, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And she's been saying it for years. And so has so many. I mean, look at Corey Feldman. He's been saying it for a long time.
Yeah.
And nobody believed him.
But what was interesting was the cast of All That.
Yeah.
We grew up watching All That. Like, I was such an All That person. I love that they had Katrina Johnson in that documentary, because I used to love Katrina so much, and they pretty much phased her out when Amanda Bynes came on season 3. But in the video, in the documentary, they talked about their experiences, and I just thought it was like really interesting how some of the cast members are All That, especially the Black ones. I don't know. It wasn't Christy Knowings. It was the other Black girl that was on there. I think she came in like season 6 or 7, right when All That was shifting.
Yeah.
Because Josh Server was the longest running original cast member. And I think after season 6, they moved to a younger crowd or whatnot, because all of us were kind of aging out. Mm-hmm. But look at all of them. I think that was about season 6. That was towards like 5 or 6 or whatnot. But the original cast included Angelique Bates, Lori Beth Denberg, Keenan and Kel, Elisa Reyes, Katrina Johnson. And I think that's pretty much it. I can name them cast members, honey. Okay.
Shit.
But it was really interesting though, just listening to their experiences, like with Dan Schneider. There was a lot of crazy things happening on set. Dan was accused of hollering, yelling on set at some of the cast members. Angelique Bates was not in the documentary, but she did talk about recently her experience on the All That set. Angelique left after 2 seasons. I think they fired her. And that's when Amanda Bynes actually came in for season 3. But Angelique, and I was reading an article, Angelique was talking about a time where she had to do this thing with a coworker that she was already having problems with. And apparently the coworker ended up spitting milk in her face. And Angelique retaliated by throwing milk back at them. And apparently Dan Schneider yelled at her on set
and
or whatnot.
Right?
Only her. Yeah. And it was just a whole thing or whatnot. Because Angelique was actually the first one to leave all that. She was actually the first original cast member to leave it. So, I'm a TV fanatic. I know all of these things. Okay. You know what I'm saying?
Well, all that let's be real. It was the 90s and it's also a white producer. They very much characterized a lot of the Black creators that were on there. Look at what they did to Nick Cannon. There's a scene where it's like people you may know, and it's like Nick Cannon sitting there, and it's some of the most like racist shit, like Nick Cannon steals and Nick Cannon this and like all this weird shit. And Nick Cannon is like maybe 15, 16 at the time. So you have to realize this white producer is writing this like anti-Black undertones that are so gentle that like you have to actually be a part of the group to actually hear the full impact of what he's saying and feel it. Because like you said, as I heard on the documentary, like I heard a lot of pain and a lot of Black folks. It seemed like they saw and they knew that white privilege was on set, and they knew that, Amanda and Drake were going to get the privilege and the priority with Dan, and they would try to make connections. They didn't feel like they could. Remember the young man that had the dicks put on him?
Yeah, Leon. I was just about to bring up Leon. And it's so funny because we didn't understand a lot of the hidden things until like Leon and everybody started talking about it. Apparently, it's like he was supposed to be the superhero, and on his shoulders, they looked like they were testicles and a penis on both sides. And when he sneezed, it was like this snotty goo that landed on Christy Knowings on her face. And apparently it was like a cum shot joke or whatnot. But us as kids, we didn't understand that. I sure did not. And I was still watching all that during that season. That was like the later seasons 5 and 6. But what was also so interesting to me was they had 2 women writers sharing one salary. Yeah. And those women were harassed. They were abused. One of the women, Dan Schneider, came in and told one of the women, pretend like, trigger warning, you're getting sodomized. Yeah. That was so triggering
in a boardroom for her to read whatever. I mean, that's...
Yeah. The men didn't care. Like, if they were the 2 women writers, they had to split a salary. Apparently, one of them went to the Writers Guild of America, as they should, because you shouldn't be splitting a salary like that.
Well, to be fair, that actually is this is the horrible thing in some spaces in Hollywood that actually is common for a new writer, for 2 writers to actually split a salary. But with the way that like supremacy and even masculinity comes into the space of just going, okay, well, we'll just hire the 2 girls and they'll split it, but the rest of the guys we're going to take care of. It's like this good old boys kind of club. So technically it's legal. Technically it's regular practice for it to happen, because there's been plenty of writers, and I'm sure throughout history there's going to be people that said, hey, I shared a salary with Bob and I was a writer and I did it on this show. But it's that layering of, especially you've got 2 women and they're the only 2 ones on the set that are splitting a salary. Meanwhile, you've got, I think they said a young man came on set and he got a full salary right away, and he was
some white guy. I think.
Yeah, because again, it's that good old boys club that kind of happens. And it's really hard sometimes to call that stuff out, because on paper it looks clean. It looks kosher. It looks good. Yeah. But the feeling of knowing that the only 2 women on set are sharing a salary, meanwhile the rest of the men are getting a full salary, that energy alone in the writing room is toxic.